Hey, what is going on? Eric Bach here with the Eric Bach Show. And today we're going to talk testosterone recovery, fixing your sleep, and the things you need to do to naturally support optimal testosterone levels. So, we're going to talk about testosterone, not just boosting it, but everything that comes with it. And I'm talking more muscle, better recovery, mental sharpness, and frankly, what a lot of guys are getting wrong. Now, this episode was inspired by a conversation with a good friend of mine, a couple about a month and a half ago now, when I was in Miami. And he was talking about his journey being on TRT. And, full disclosure, right? Like some of my clients are on TRT, some are not. It's something that can be a great medical intervention. I'm not a doctor, but I am going to support people if it's going to help them look, feel, and perform the way that they want. Now, let me give you a little bit of a backstory. This individual is 40 years old, and in this point, he's in better shape now than he was at 35, or hell, even 30. And when he was 35, his testosterone levels were 186. For reference, when you go and get a blood test, the reference range given is either 254 to 916 or 300 to 1,000, depending on the doctor that you go to. Within that, typically I notice a lot of guys feel like shit below about 500. And so for reference, this gentleman was 186. He had aching knees, a stiff back. He was 45 pounds overweight. Recently, at this point, his business had been throttled by COVID, and it sent him into a tailspin, really. And a lot of guys can relate to this. Really, he was smoking weed daily to calm his nerves. His marriage was on the rocks, and he was previously a very disciplined, successful guy financially and physically, but his personal habits were really out of alignment with the man that he wanted to be. And one of the biggest things to understand with testosterone levels, whether you're on TRT, whether you have naturally adequate levels, is testosterone makes effort feel good. Listen to that again. Optimal testosterone levels help make effort feel good. And so this guy, he's over the last 2 years, he's really been on a massive personal development journey. He's down 45 pounds. His testosterone levels have gone from about 186 to around 1,000. And frankly, he's doubled his pre-COVID income. As he said, every conceivable thing in his life has improved since he started testosterone replacement therapy. His habits have improved. He's following a safe protocol directly with his doctor, not buying some bootlegged shit from China or out of the back of the gym. And he's really transformed his life. He really noted specifically, he's like, Eric, man, I'm feeling more focused and energetic at work, and I have the energy to be a great dad and husband after work, which has reignited his passion for a lot of different things in life. And so the reality is, a lot of people think TRT or improving your testosterone levels is cheating, it's working against your biology, and it's just trying to take a shortcut. But honestly, that could be further from the truth, because there's nothing in this modern world, a time when we sit behind screens, we have a constant flow of information, food is incredibly processed, made out of all kinds of shit and, packaged in things that leach into our food and naturally suppress our hormone levels. We are living a world that is much different than what biology intended. And frankly, he said what really every guy that I've worked with who has improved their testosterone levels, whether naturally or using something like TRT, that every aspect of life is infinitely better. We're talking sex life, we're talking personal life, professional life, and family life. But here's the catch. You don't necessarily need TRT. For some guys, is it necessary? Of course. For others, it's not. And the big thing I want to convey here is we have to always focus on the lifestyle things that reduce testosterone levels. You see, what happens now is we see TRT and a lot of these men's health clinics are so popular. Some are great, some are not, that you can go in, get a blood test, and pretty soon you're on TRT without any focus on your lifestyle. And so the downsides of TRT, the issues that people really pop up and experience when it comes to testosterone replacement therapy, often extend out from not fixing the lifestyle first. People still sleep like shit. They drink too much. They do not focus on proactively reducing stress. They are not following a healthy diet that's going to help lead to fat loss and building lean muscle, and they're not training correctly. And so if you add TRT, it's like pouring gasoline on a fire that's already raging instead of fixing the underlying components. It's like putting a Band-Aid over a bullet hole, right? And so in the case of my good friend here who's telling the story, he focused on fixing all of those things. Testosterone made it slightly easier. It made it better. It made it feel good. And by extension, his life has improved dramatically. And so what I want to do is break down now some of the key components that we need to focus on, first and foremost, to naturally support testosterone levels, right? To naturally put the environment in where your body is healthier to avoid potential issues that can pop up. And so the number one thing you can focus on here is going to be sleep. Is it any surprise that men typically see testosterone levels decrease in their 30s, often in conjunction with becoming a father? No surprise at all. The reality is, when we sleep, we need at least 7 hours. And if we're getting less than that, we are actively sabotaging fat loss and testosterone production, right? When we want to be able to optimize sleep, I always think of the 10-3-2-1 sleep system. That means 10 hours before bed, cut out your caffeine intake, right? The half life of caffeine is going to keep you awake. It's going to suppress melatonin, make it difficult for you to fall asleep. 3 hours before bed, if you can abstain from food, please, by all means, do so. If we have too much food in our gut, we're going to divert resources directly towards that digestive process. Digestion is often impaired, and it's going to negatively impact your ability to sleep. 2 hours before bed, cut out work. Again, you don't want to be sitting in bed, having your head spin, thinking about work shit that's got to go on the next day. That is a special place in hell and not a good way to disconnect. And then after we do that, 1 hour before bed, try to cut out the blue light, at least turn down the TV or the electrical devices that you're using in order to optimize sleep quality. In addition to that, when it comes to sleep, it's crucial to get up and go to bed at the same time, at least within an hour, 7 days per week. Do not be a bar star like a 21-year-old who is just able to go to the bars and have a good time. And pretty soon you're staying up till 1, 2, 3 in the morning on the weekend. And then you got to turn around and wake up at 6 a.m. on the weekdays. That is intentionally giving yourself jet lag. Instead, we want to set that consistency so we are dialed in each and every single day. Now, a few things you can do that are going to aid in that overall sleep quality. If you are somebody who consumes a good amount of caffeine, if you're chronically stressed, take 1,000 milligrams of L-theanine about 90 minutes before bed. You can even do it probably 2 or 3 hours before bed if you're having your last meal at that point. And then about 400 milligrams of magnesium, specifically magnesium glycinate. That's going to help you decompress, going to help you relax, and go from there. Ultimately, sleep is something that many of us do still neglect, even though we hear all the important benefits of it because we'd rather watch Netflix and scroll on our phone. Yet it is the biggest lever, the simplest thing, the least expensive thing that people can do in order to improve both physical and mental performance, and of course, support healthy hormone levels. Now, the second component is going to be actively reducing stress, right? Stress, if we are not proactively doing things to reduce the stressors that we are facing each and every single day, stress will proactively suppress everything else we're trying to do. It's going to erode our willpower. It's going to elevate cortisol. It is going to make it more difficult to stick to anything that we are doing. So if you notice that you're getting stressed out because you are following political news or every little thing going on in the economy or getting into like bitchy little fights over on social media, whatever it is, take time away from that stuff. I'll tell you what, I didn't realize how many like small habits that I was having that were creeping into my daily routine. And until I went on a recent trip, really disconnected from social media, really from everything for about 4 days and was just truly present with my family, did I realize all of the issues or all of the things that were kind of zapping my focus, right? I realized that I was spending more time on social media than I should, even though it's part of what I do, obviously, for my job. I was spending too much time getting wrapped up in what was happening in the world outside of me, things that I couldn't necessarily control, whether it be, looking at politics and different stuff like that. And just realizing that all of these small factors were really bleeding into my mindset throughout the day, right? And especially if we are scrolling on our phones or always behind screens or on social media, doing these things consistently, not only are we consuming things that are probably outside of our control and provide an impossible vertical to compare yourself against to or where you're at, but we have to remember that these devices are directly linked to nonstop dopamine production, right? The people who create our phones, who create social media, are the same people who make gambling addictive in Las Vegas casinos. And so taking time away from things like that can be a simple way to proactively reduce your stress, improve your presence, and frankly, improve overall well-being. That seems like it could be a far extension away from testosterone, but I promise you that it's not, because when dopamine regulation gets out of whack, because we're constantly consuming all of these small things that are meant to keep us hooked in, our ability to feel good, to stay motivated, decrease. And when that happens, self-sabotage. Frankly, we start to chase dopamine hits in a different way. This has kind of led to the issue that a lot of people have with pornography or with, frankly, because drugs are more accessible than ever with things like consistent marijuana use. People are still drinking a decent amount, even though it's been less, right? Like all of these things are connected definitively to dopamine pathways, which are often hijacked by the things that we do on a daily basis. And so if you think about it, many times vices really flow from an ability or an inability to really regulate our habits and dopamine. And by extension, we are simply trying to find a way to feel good, which is typically what most vices do. It's a short-term trade, right, for what we want long-term. So focus on reducing things that keep you looped in, that keep providing more stress and are probably pulling you away from the things you want to do most. Now, a few strategies you can do to proactively reduce that stress. Number one is getting clear on what you want to accomplish most. Again, the primary issue most people face with stress is the actions that they take are incongruent with the person who they want to be, right? For example, you make a promise and you don't keep it to yourself. That feels like shit. You make a promise to yourself and you keep it. Hell yeah, you build self-concept faster than anything else in the world, right? And so one small thing that I do, and this really helps with a business mastermind that I'm in. Shout out Early to Rise, Craig Ballantyne, Daniel Woodrum, Galil Farhado, Gavin McHale, Shannon Logan, the whole team. They do a great job. But I write what my goals are over the course of a year, and I break them down into 90 days. Once I have that 90-day goal, I will break it down into what I need to do in 24 hours, 72 hours, 7 days, 21 days, 28 days, right? And this sounds like a little bit of work. And it is, because anything worth having requires some level of work. But I put this in my office where I can see it daily. Right now, if I look to my left, I can see my whiteboard with my goals clearly at the top of my mind. And so anytime I look to my left, I've got another computer screen here. I look a little bit further, I see my goals. I'm consistently reinforcing and keeping my goals top of mind. And when I do that, it gives me that ability to stay focused on the things that I need to do personally, professionally, in my relationships, all of these different areas to frankly feel good. And you know what? When I do these things, when I'm acting in alignment with the person I want to be most, that is one of the most important things I can personally do to reduce stress. And you're probably going to find out the same thing. Because if you take inventory of the things that maybe you do that you don't like, or the things that typically drive up your stress, well, they're probably not in alignment with what you want most in life anyway. So getting clear on what that actually means and then aligning your actions with what you want most is absolutely crucial, because that incongruence drives up stress and it drives up, frankly, a lot of poor behaviors that pull us away from what means the most. In addition to that, long walks. Long walks on the beach. Sounds wonderful, right? Hey, maybe you don't have a beach, right? But the same principle still stands out. The best thinkers in the history of the world did not think of, many of the things that they created just by sitting behind a desk. Often they took long walks, often for hours with maybe a notepad, and they would put down their thoughts. We live in a world that's hyper-connected now, and being able to disconnect from work, from podcasts, from all these different things, not this podcast though, come on guys, and be able to get out and get moving is absolutely crucial, both from a stress relief component, but frankly, a deep work and conscious awareness thought. Personally, in the morning, I go for about a 45-minute walk, take the dog out. Sometimes I'll listen to a podcast unrelated to work. Sometimes it's completely quiet, right? Being able to unplug, being able to hear nature, being able to be out in green spaces is something that has been scientifically proven to decrease stress and decrease cortisol, right? And so by working these habits in, yeah, you can support better fat loss, but more importantly, you can proactively reduce stress in your day and do something that's going to help the future you. So I like the idea of going for a long walk in the morning and then short 5 to 10 minute walks, ideally, after a meal. That's also going to be something to help support postprandial insulin sensitivity, basically how well we handle carbohydrates directly after a meal. So that's a very simple thing that you can do in order to get leaner and reduce stress. Finally, when going for these walks, if you do not meditate, I like apps like Headspace and Calm if you do enjoy meditation, but I use deep nasal breathing. So I'm not one of these guys who's going to tape my mouth shut and walk around in public. Sorry, just not going to do that shit. Good for you if you do. But I will focus just on breathing through my nose, right? I've got a deviated septum, so I can really only breathe out of one nostril. So this can be quite challenging, but I will just focus on breathing deep in through my nose, into my stomach, and long exhales. That has been shown to decrease stress and, by extension of that, improve overall breathing patterns. And again, over time, that's going to be something that's very, very beneficial for supporting optimal testosterone levels. Then finally, unplugging. When I get done with work for the day, I will take my phone. I have a lockbox. It's actually behind me somewhere in my office. And I will lock my phone up for 90 minutes. So when I get done, I am disconnecting from all the triggers from work, anything that's going to pull my attention away from my family. And by extension, that lowers my stress because I am therefore acting in alignment with the person I want to be, supporting my family, being present, so on and so forth, right? So really doing anything you can to proactively reduce stress is going to be absolutely crucial across the board when it comes to supporting healthy testosterone levels and overall recovery. Now, When it comes to workouts, when it comes to nutrition, the juicy stuff that we're really here about, the most important concept that we need to understand without getting too tactical into the weeds is this idea of synergy. And this is something that is a clear staple in everything that we do at Bach Performance. And synergy is the alignment between the way that we train, the way that we eat, and our lifestyle. Let me give you an example here. A lot of guys will come to me and say, Eric, I'm eating really clean. I'm using like a low carb, ketogenic type diet, and I'm training 4 or 5 days a week. And I'll say, hey, awesome, man. Like, you're obviously working really hard, and that's great. But here's the battle, right? The way that we train needs to blend in with what our goals are specifically, yes, and with the way that we eat. So here's the example. Any diet that severely limits one macronutrient, carbohydrates, fat, typically is going to have issues that come along with it. And so I'm going to pick on the low carb stuff right now, but long-term low carbohydrate diets have been shown to increase cortisol and increase SHBG. SHBG decreases your free testosterone. That's a bioavailable testosterone your body actually has to use. So what happens with a lot of people is they will pick one type of diet that sounds good. Maybe it's trendy. Maybe it's worked for them in the past. And then they'll take a workout plan that's fun, something enjoyable. Maybe that's worked in the past. These two things may be independently very good, but together they are misaligned. Some common examples here would be carnivore and CrossFit, or bodybuilding with a consistent low carb, low calorie diet. Why? Well, when we look at the intensity of exercise, the more intense an exercise is, and intense in this case, what I'm referring to is like overall, like super high volume, right? If we have a very high volume workout, a very high volume bodybuilding workout, if we have very intense cardiovascular exercise where your heart rate is, basically getting redlined, again, that is going to be intense cardio. The higher the intensity of which we go, the more carbohydrate dominant that activity is. And so let's say you're in a diet, you're trying to lose fat, you're trying to support healthy hormone levels, all of these things, which are good, but you're following a very low carbohydrate diet. You're using a lot of fasting, and you've been doing this now for a long period of time, right? Well, what can happen here is because we are not consuming carbohydrates to support that performance, the ideal fuel source for those types of training, our body, we're going to break down some fat. Of course we are, but we're also going to break down more muscle tissue. Right? So we're decreasing overall performance and we're increasing the breakdown of muscle tissue, which for a lot of people, these people end up doing like a ton of high intensity interval training and a ton of low carb, low calorie dieting for a prolonged period of time. They might be burning calories, but they're also burning a shitload of muscle and they end up skinny fat. So a better approach is you need to align the style of workouts, the type of training that you are doing specifically with what your nutrition is going to look like. We know that with nutrition specifically, if we control for calories and we control for protein, really carbohydrates and fat balance can be more or less a matter of personal preference, right? So they can both work incredibly well for losing body fat. So what we want to think about here is, well, if we're going to have more intensity, well, we should have a greater proportion of carbohydrates into our diet, right? It only makes sense. And frankly, if you look at people who build the best physiques in the world, a lot of them focus on is going to be a higher carbohydrate intake with lower fat, right? Once we get past 20, 25% of fat intake in your diet, there is not a benefit really to anything. There's just simply not, specifically if we end up over consuming them. Typically, we think about fats, the key benefit there is going to be absorbing, certain vitamins and minerals more effectively, but hormone production. But that's really, again, tapped out like that 20, 25, even 30%, right? So there's no real physiological benefit to following high fat diets. Maybe if you're trying to treat a medical condition and you need to do something ketogenic based, not my cup of tea, so to speak, or nor am I practicing medicine in any of these cases. So that would be something to consider with a doctor in a unique case. But again, putting fat up too high is not going to solve most issues in that regard, beyond creating maybe calorie control across the board. So biggest thing to focus on here is, listen, if you're training hard, if you're training with high intensity or high volume, you're going to need a greater proportion of carbohydrates to optimally support that performance and optimally support the balance and ratio between cortisol and testosterone. Now, if you're trying to get shredded, that's going to be a little bit different than maximizing testosterone recovery. Inherently, when we are cutting and cutting aggressively, there is going to be a compromise in terms of some hormone levels, in terms of overall performance. But again, keeping the eye on testosterone here, we need to think about, is my nutrition actually corresponding with the type of training that I'm doing? Is that providing the adequate balance that we need for hormone production across the board? And remember that low carbohydrate diets, specifically done over a long period of time, can increase SHBG, which decreases free testosterone, and can elevate cortisol, which also decreases testosterone. So, getting that alignment, it's not enough just to follow a diet that is healthy and a workout plan that is good. What we have to do is make sure that these things are fully in alignment. So, the way that we're eating supports our training and supports our overall lifestyle. Tying one more thing into that is the higher stress that we have typically in life, the more beneficial carbohydrates can become. So, what we have to think about here is carbohydrates help suppress cortisol. One of the primary reasons that people recommend carbohydrates after a training session is they can help decrease cortisol, that stress response that happens after a hard training session. So, we see a lot of people that get fired up. They're wired. They like to be running on adrenaline all day. So they're fasting. They're going very low carbohydrates. They're on stimulants, but they're also very stressed out from their career, from their family, so on and so forth. Again, I enjoy that feeling too. I will use it in spurts, 30 to 60 day blocks at max. But if we run on this nonstop, we are running on cortisol, and it can start to suppress those hormone levels across the board. And that's something we want to obviously avoid when it comes to looking, feeling, and performing our best. All right. So these things are all important, gang. If we want to really support optimal testosterone and recovery, a lot of it comes down to sleep, stress, and that overall synergy between the type of training that we're doing and the way that we eat. If we dial those components in, those are going to be the three biggest levers beating the shit out of any supplement protocol that you can really take, whether it is something recommended on something like a Huberman Lab protocol or something you're reading on a supplement website. Focus on sleep, focus on stress, focus on that alignment. That is going to be the most important thing. If supplements are going to help, particularly with sleep and stress, great. Be my guest, knock those out. I personally recommend definitely loading up on magnesium glycinate, L-theanine if you need to de-stress a little bit and typically consume a lot of caffeine. Those will be huge things. All right. So, hey, gang, thank you so much for joining us on this episode. If you have any questions, make sure you're dropping them directly on the YouTube channel or fire something over to me on IG at Bach Performance. And as always, if you're getting value from this, please share this with somebody. That's how we know that we are providing a lot of value and getting the great information out there for you. And drop us a 5-star review. This is Eric Bach signing off. Thank you for joining the Eric Bach Show. I will catch you on the next one.